Yeah, it reminds me of that you made a video. Someone at TED Talk, they did a creative writing video. Do you remember that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you did that whole thing where it's like they just add a bunch of adjectives that make they're not related at all to a girl being sick or whatever like that. And then in the point you make this whole point where it's just like sometimes a short declarative sentence is going to be the number one thing that you want to actually convey what's happening.
Right.
The most direct to the point. I
But
think you kind of, if it's going to be fancy or whatever, you gotta have to kind of earn that a little bit.
but when for example, I talk about total immersion, uh, you can change things up. If let's say I have that rat-a-tat-tat style that I use in true life, but then I'm talking about, for example, in this last book that I wrote called The Grand and the Glorious, there's a couple of mobsters, a father and son mobster that have the same name. That was it Tommy Sclafani, I think it was Tom Sclafani Jr. and Senior, and both of them. Are people who just talk and talk and talk, and they say they don't say much, although they sometimes have little gems of wisdom within their verbosity. But that's to establish the character. When I was using this total immersion technique a lot, especially in like a Norwegian in the family, a lot of times it's not what people are talking about, but how they're talking about that's important. And I might have a 7 or 8 page run of two guys just sitting next to each other bullshitting, two old mobster guys say bullshitting, but they're talking about their old past. What that the details are not important. The way that they relate the details to each other is the important thing, because that gives you the insight into the character. Now, this woman who was putting post-its all across her fucking wall to try to write this terrible trans Moby Dick bullshit novel is never going to understand that type of way, because the way that I'm talking, if you and I were just met somewhere and you came up to me and said, Dan, I read your book. I think it really affected me somehow. The way you and I are talking, or the way our body posture might be, is going to say sometimes a lot more than what you're actually saying, because I may have heard the similar things that you are saying, but maybe you're a bit more pugnacious than another person who came to me up in awe of some reason. Those are the kinds of things that you try to convey, because, as I say, character is plot. No one gives a flying fuck about the crew of the Pequod, just because they're going after that fucking white whale. How the characters relate to each other is the thing, because it gives you an insight into the human condition, or even to move beyond that, into the condition of how people or creatures with brains, assuming they are out there and we're not alone in the universe, how they relate to this cosmos. Why are we here? What is this about? And how does that relate? Now, some madman who's whipping his crew to chase a white whale halfway across the Pacific, in and of itself is interesting, but it's how it's done. Art is about the how, the art of the thing. If I were to write a play about this conversation that we're having via Skype, if I'm just using the transcript of what we're saying, okay, that has some interesting moments. But if I can bring something deeper and take that and immerse it into something, it's like dropping something into a pool of jello, then it's going to take on some different kind of aspect. Most artists don't think that way because, number one, they can't think that way, or if they do, they get it rubbed out by a system that wants to just churn things out. The problem with arts today is it's been commoditized, commodified, and this started after World War II, where people think you can't teach someone, for example, to write like Melville. You can't.
No.
You can teach the MLS Chicago Manual of Style way to write a good business letter. Big deal. I need to order 37.3 tons of magnesium ore for our. That's not writing. That's how you write a letter. That's not how you write to touch someone in 1,000 years, because even after all that we have in this world is dust, in 10,000 years, and someone can translate something I wrote, and I've said many times, it could be a creature 10,000 years from now from another species that is reading a translation of an ancient human literature, and one of my poems is there, and it affects that being. That's the thing that's important. Not this other bullshit.